Thank you very much and very good morning to all of you. It's nice to see an audience full of both practitioners and educationists because I think the future of our country, the future of the state, the city, it all depends on people like you and what kind of values, what kind of skills, what kind of capabilities can you inculcate in young people. I'm also delighted because Lakshmi just pointed out that all three of us have the name Natarajan somewhere in our mix. I don't know how many of you are aware. Ganesh Natarajan, Natarajan Krishna Kumar, Natarajan Lakshmi Narayan. So clearly there is a cosmic dance that is going to happen somewhere. So we can look forward to that. Let me start by giving you a couple of anecdotes. I have been in this industry for 25 years. I mean, started my career in the 80s in mechanical engineering, in actually factory shop floor management, and then accidentally moved into this industry. And I still remember in the early part of my career, I met this young man called Devang Mehta. Devang Mehta, as many of you may know, was the very young first leader of NASSCOM. After that, we've had 3 other leaders who have all taken it to great heights. But Devang's biggest strength, and I would believe the biggest strength of the Indian IT industry, was his ability to tell wonderful stories. And I still remember I think it was in 1993 or 94, I was with him in the Middle East addressing a conference in Dubai. And in 93 or 94, ladies and gentlemen, the Indian IT industry was not the big information powerhouse it is today. I mean, it was still fairly small, fairly unknown, and as somebody already said in the beginning, it was very America-centric. And Devang, of course, was capable of cooking up a story to suit every audience. And this was an audience full of around almost 500 people from Dubai and Abu Dhabi and Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. And he said, let me tell you a story. The first time the Indian ICT industry ever thought of exporting anything was to the Gulf. It's completely untrue, but Devang, of course, when he said something, everybody believed it. So then he said, let me tell you why it happened. And he said, look, there was this very rich Arab sheikh, and as all of you know, Arab sheikhs are very well known for the oil, because that is where the origins of the Gulf came from. And also their wealth is measured in the number of camels they own. And he told the story of this very rich Arab sheikh who one day dies in the middle of the desert, and the whole Bedouins and the family gets together and they start understanding how much wealth he has and find that he has 17 camels, which is the kind of signifies his wealth. They also discover that he has 3 sons, and they say, look, so how do we distribute these camels? Because the man has died and we have to give the camels to the sons. And then they find he has left a will. And in the will, it's a very complicated will. Okay, in the will it says that half my camels must go to my first son, 1/3 of my camels to the second son, and 1/9 of my camels to the third son. Now that doesn't need too much maths to do anything. So they quickly calculate half by 17, not possible, 1/3 of 17, not possible, 1/9 of 17, not possible. And one thing you do not do in the Middle East, ladies and gentlemen, you don't cut camels and make them 9.5. I mean, it doesn't work that way. So they say, we have this big problem. And then somebody tells them, look, there are these geniuses that are coming up in the city of Chennai. It is called the Indian ICT industry. And they discover that the largest company is a company called TCS, which is in Cathedral Road in Chennai. I'm sure Lakshmi was there in Cathedral Road at that time. And they send a fax. This is before email. No email, no WhatsApp, no messages, nothing. So they send a fax to TCS and say, look, we have this very complicated problem of wealth. Can you help us? And they get a fax back from TCS. Sure, we can help you. And so all the Arabs are waiting in the middle of the desert, saying the Indian ICT industry will come and solve our problem. So after 7 days pass, and then finally they see this young person from Chennai who is coming, riding his camel to the group. And he comes and says, look, I'm from TCS Chennai, so what is your problem? And they tell him, no, there is this complex problem. He says, that's not a big problem, you keep my camel. So they keep his camel. Suddenly it becomes 18 camels. The first son gets half, which is 9 camels. The second son gets 1/3, which is 6 camels. The third son gets 1/9, which is 2 camels. So it's 9 plus 6, 15 plus 2, 17. And there's still 1 camel left. And the TCS person says, that's my camel. And he takes it and rides back to Chennai. See? Simple. No technology, no complicated mainframe technology. Simple Indian ingenuity. And when I listen to what my friend KK was just telling you, I think at the end of the day, this entire industry, ladies and gentlemen, is built not by machinery, not by capital equipment, but by sheer Indian ingenuity. I mean, today we have 33 lakh young people working in this industry. And I think what they bring to the table is hopefully what you have taught them, which is Indian ingenuity. And if I look at the industry, and if we look at the industry globally and the opportunity that we have with the 1.3 trillion, 1.4 trillion, we are very proud of the fact that today India has 55% market share in offshore consulting and business processes. It's probably the single largest market share any country has in any industry sector anywhere in the world. And it's literally been built from scratch. It's been built by people like you, okay, who have kind of taken this industry to your heart and made these young children happen. And I would also like to echo something that KK just said, which is today the opportunity is truly global. And many of our young people, I mean, I just finished writing my 7th book, and I wrote this book on a very non-technology topic. The book is called What We Really Want, which was actually peeping into the minds of the 24-year-old young person working in the IT industry and say, what is their real aspiration? A colleague and I spent almost 8 months researching into the people, just talking to young people in final year of engineering or technology, or young people who have just joined companies. In fact, we're doing a full seminar in Pune on Saturday with 400 young people, just telling them our findings. And we discovered that if you look at the typical mind of the young person who joins an IT company, sure, they want to join a TCS or a Cognizant or a Zensar or a Mindtree because it's a nice brand name to join. They don't really want to spend the rest of their life there. I remember asking 40 young people in my office, in my campus, and saying, how many of you would like to take my job one day? I said, are you mad, sir? We will never want to take your job. So I thought they were being polite. They don't want my job, okay? What they want is to spend 2 years in Zensar and then do this 3 years at least on-site. We must go to America, not to Dubai, but to America. And then I said, look, after 5 years, what do you want to be? And we actually asked them to draw paintings or pictures, not to talk. Okay? One of them drew this typical guitar player at the end of it. Every young man wants to be a rock star. Many young girls actually drew pictures of people feeding the poor. There were lots of Mother Teresa kind of images. And when we started doing one-to-one group discussions with them, we found that the young people today are a very different breed from what young people in our time was. And young people in our time, I mean, I grew up in the very fancy state of Bihar. My friend KK still calls me a Bihari and not a Tamilian, which is probably true. But when we were growing up, and I still remember when I was in school, my father was actually running a factory in a place called Tati Silva. You've never heard of it. It's 10 kilometers from Ranchi, which is today the capital of Jharkhand. Today people know Ranchi because Mahendra Singh Dhoni comes from Ranchi. Okay, there's no other reason. But otherwise, even today, nobody would know where Ranchi is. And I still remember we used to actually cycle 5 kilometers every morning to school because that was the only form of transport. And it was only in class 8 that somebody told me that, look, there is something called IIT. And a friend of mine and I, we got very excited saying, okay, we must get into IIT. And I still remember the principal of my school, and it was a typical Christian missionary school, he called me and said, look, I heard that you want to get into IIT, and he says, that is not for you. I said, why, sir? He said, look, this is a real small village missionary school. We do not teach you good physics, we do not teach you good chemistry, maths, all we do is teach you good English. So I said, what on earth is this English going to be of any use to me? And he said, look, you think about it, that if there is something you're extremely good at, and if you can build a career around that, you'll be successful. It was the first epiphany I had in my life, and I didn't even know the meaning of the word epiphany at that point of time, that ultimately, we should all aspire to build companies, build institutions, where we are able to look at what are the skills, what are the capabilities of young people, and help them to build careers there. By forcing people into a certain model and saying, look, I don't care whether you want to be a rock star or Mother Teresa, you will somehow build a career in this company, it's not going to help. So the point I want to make is that it's true for us as CEOs of companies. I mean, if you look at my own career, I think if at all I've practiced anything to a very large extent, it is communications. And I do not claim to be a great computer professional. I do not claim to be a great manufacturing professional, though I started there. But at the end of the day, if you can make a living by giving people a point of view, by giving people some ambition, some aspiration, I think you can be successful. So that's how I used my original English skills. Today, if you look at the industry, and that's the point I want to kind of finish with, the opportunities are tremendous. KK already talked about the numbers, and I mentioned the global opportunity. The Indian opportunity is significant. I mean, let us not get disheartened by switching on television at 9 p.m. every night and watching everybody hate each other on television. In fact, you may be surprised that the only news channel I watch nowadays at 9 p.m. is Doordarshan. Because Doordarshan gives you pure news. Okay? And I don't really care how many people hate how many parties in this country, because I think I'm old enough to form my own point of view. So the reason I'm saying this is that today there is so much negativism in our country. I mean, I was really distressed, and I'm sure all of you are, to hear the story of this young lady called Uma Maheshwari. And I think it is symptomatic of the jealousies that are there in our system. It is symptomatic of the fact that there are so many haves and there are so few haves and so many have-nots, that I think we are building a society in this country where some of us will start living like the Arab sheikhs do in the Middle East, live in garden compounds and be worried of walking out into the streets. Now, this is a real divisive threat that we have in front of us. And I think there is one thing that we must think about is that if this economy is only going to grow, I still remember 1 year back people said, oh, India will only grow 5%, but next year will grow 6.5%. Today, if you look at forecasts, this year the economy will probably grow less than 4.8%. Next year, it's already being brought down by the World Bank and Moody's and everybody else to 5.5%. By the time we're through, maybe next year is 5%. All of you know that unless our country grows 8 to 9% per year for the next 10 years, we are not going to bring 300 million people out of poverty. And in such a context, here we are discussing what kind of education to give to our people. So the only point I want to make to you, ladies and gentlemen, is, I mean, by all means, give them the great skills in Java and .NET and systems of engagement and digital transformation, everything else. But do not forget that at the end of the day, we are all sitting in India. We are all building more Indians for the future. And I think we will be successful if we give them 3 basic concepts of education. The first is humility. Okay, because today we have a real problem, like in many parts of the West, that people who are very well educated and come from good colleges will look down on the rest of India. And this digital divide, as we keep calling it, is something that can be very, very counterproductive for the nation. So humility is, I think, something, I mean, you can't teach humility, you have to teach it by practicing humility. I mean, if any of us believe we are this big CEO of a 2,000, 3,000 crore company, and hence we are above it, I think we've lost it ourselves. So each one of us has to practice that humility in an organization. We have to be able to reach out and talk to people, talk to the security guard, talk to the person who serves tea in the canteen, and talk to every young person and make sure we are connected. So I think that connectedness is important. The second, which is, I think, related to connectedness, is collaboration. I think we have to encourage young people, whether it's an ICT academy, in the colleges that all of you are teaching in, to be very, very collaborative. This is one industry which was built on collaboration. I mean, today we are very proud that the number of non-Indian employees of the ICT industry is approaching double digits, which really means that we have Americans, Europeans, Chinese, Japanese, whatever. I mean, multiple nationalities working with us. How do you collaborate and how do we become truly global? Because when we talk about a global industry will not happen by people opening offices in America and Europe and Asia and the Middle East. It's going to happen when we think global. When we think that we are all part of one connected global civilization, and we're going to make that happen. So I think that's the second thing I want to say, that look, we must have the ability to collaborate. The third is the ability to learn. Many of us even today believe that, look, okay, if I've done engineering and I've done this excellent program with ICT Academy, my life is done. Now the world has to take care of me. Many of us who continue to learn, I mean, I think you mentioned IIT and Harvard Business School. I did my engineering in Birla Institute of Technology, Mesra in Ranchi, did my industrial engineering in NITI, and it's only 10 years later that I did my PhD in IIT Bombay, and 15 years later that I went and did the advanced management program in Harvard Business School. Because I genuinely believe that every 5 years, if you don't stop and say, look, are you too full of yourself, or are you learning enough, I think we will have lost it somewhere. So building this learning culture where people have an open mind, are willing to listen, is important. So I'm going to conclude by saying, first of all, congratulations to Lakshmi and the whole team of ICT Academy. I think you guys are doing fantastic work, because what we really need is government and corporate sector collaborative initiatives like ICT Academy. That will take the country forward. What we will need, and that's really what I want to stop, is the ability to mentor young people. Okay, give them a point of view which leverages the skills, like the young TCS engineer I talked about, ingenuity. But if you combine ingenuity with global opportunity, I think we'll create a great industry. Right now, I spend a lot of my time mentoring young students, as I mentioned earlier. But I think if youth can learn to be humble, can learn to learn all the time and collaborate, I think we will all build a great industry and, more important, a great country for all of us. So thank you very much.